What up, everybody? It's Dylan with Magickal Chams. I'm making a DIY fogger in this video. Now, why would I go to such lengths to make a DIY fogger? Well, I worked with the ZoomEd Rep defogger before, and one's off Amazon, and they're just not really that great for a couple of reasons. Main reason being is they don't really produce a lot of fog, so the humidity in my enclosures, in my chameleon's enclosures, isn't really changing. So why waste my money on something that's not going to have any effect on the well-being of my chameleons? The other reason is because the reservoirs that hold the water on those commercial foggers is so hard to clean. It needs to be cleaned at some point. And to get in there with, especially with me, like me, when you have large hands, it's hard to get in there and clean it. So I had to come up with a way to increase their humidity at night in an effective way while being able to clean said machine properly, so that we don't, get bacteria in our water, and then that translates to our chameleon potentially breathing it in, or it drying on plants, and then they drink it up and get, a bacterial infection, or RI, a respiratory infection. Now, I will say, before I get into this, please do your research and make sure this is something that you're comfortable doing. I'm not saying that this is the method to increase nighttime humidity. I'm just saying that this really helps, and I've not had any problems with my chameleons getting RIs from it. But just do your research, because there's as many things in the reptile community. Is very subjective and controversial. So I'll go ahead and link a description to a great thread on chameleon forums below that you can read all about it if you choose to. Alrighty, so I had previously mentioned that by making a fogger or using a fogger, you create higher humidity at night. And the reason we wanted to do that, or we would be inclined to do so, is because in the wild, a lot of chameleons are exposed to high nighttime humidity, as high as 100%. Now, for years, we've just missed it a lot during the day and not fogged at night, and it's been drier at night, and that works. But in order to create a more naturalistic sort of keeping experience, that is why we would want to increase the nighttime humidity. All right, for the first part of the build, you'll want to get a plastic container. The one I chose to use is called a gasket container. And the way a gasket container differs from a normal plastic container is that the lid has a foam right here that essentially makes it airtight. Now, this is extraordinarily useful when making a fogger because that hinders fog from getting out. The next thing we'll do is we'll drill a hole for our fan that we're going to use. And essentially what that hole does is it allows air to be sucked in and then acts as the driving force to pull the fog through the pipes and into the cages. Now, for the pipes, we're going to be using 2-inch PVC, and the way we attach that to the cage is by making holes in the lid of the reservoir, and then getting male PVC adapters like this, and taking that and then just screwing it in. Let's get to it. The first thing I'm going to need to do is drill a hole for my fan, my waterproof cooling fan. This is 120 millimeters. And then this is a 4 1/4 inch hole saw. So essentially what we're doing is we're going to make a hole for this fan to have air go into the container. All right. So I'm going to I want it about right here in the center. That way the airflow will be even to the fog ducts or the fog pipes. So right about right there. Now, you don't have to do this, you could just eye it, but I want to find the center. So 6 1/4. It's right there. So now we want to get hole saw. Now I'm just going to take the center of this, because that's what's going to guide it. I'm just going to go slow. All right, and then this part, you want to go slow so you don't crack the plastic. There it is. And if it gets kind of tight a little bit, don't force it, because you will crack the plastic if you do that. Now that we're done with that, you want to just get a utility blade and just clean up these edges. Get off all those little, you don't have to put a lot of force into this. Just run the blade across the edge at an angle on the top. Just get rid of all that extra junk that we don't need. Okay, sweet. So now we have our hole. And then now we're going to take this fan, make sure that the air is flowing in the right direction. There's an arrow usually on the fan to show you. So you need to mount it about right there and get some duct tape just to hold this in place. Now, did a drill bit. I'm not sure what size this is. I think, well, no, I do know what size this is. This is a 5/32. And this fits in the holes here of the fan. So I take this. I'm just gonna hold our fan down, run this through. What we actually need to do right now is put on our filter so nothing gets in the water while air is being sucked into it. Just a little piece of foam or filter, whatever you want to call it. And then this side with the holes goes on your fan, which is the part that I just almost missed. Okay, so let's get our screws back in with this piece on top. Then, do this. Want to put a Phillips head bit on here. That's the one that looks like a little X or a cross or what have you. And then now we screw in. Sweet. Now we have this plate on top. We can take the other half of this with the filter, and then that just clicks right on top. Boom. Okay. All right. Now, we want to get our holes ready for our PVC. So, take off your annoying stickers if you're into that. Otherwise, keep them on there. Now, for the smaller PVC, it was like 1.5 inches, the width of the thread. So I chose a little spade bit for this that is a little under 1.5 inches. That way when we thread it, thread the base, the male adapter in there, it will have the threads will have something to catch on to. So first thing I'm gonna do is think about where I want my holes. All right, so about right there. That way I can still fit my other ones in. And then with this spade bit, you just want to go slow. Don't force the drill. Don't go full power or else you will crack the plastic and have to start over. Now for these other, so that one was for the 1.25 inch PVC male adapter. For this one, this is going to be for the 2 inch PVC. So yeah, I'm going to use a 2.25 inch hole saw right here. All right, so there's one. Now the other one, do my best to put in the center of the two. just like that. Let the blade do all the work. Don't put too much pressure and crack your plastic. All right, now we're going to take our blade and just clean up these edges the same way we would do with the fan. Boom, there it is. Now we've got our there are three holes for our PVC to attach. All right, the next step of this video, we're gonna install a float valve. Now, you don't have to do this, but I highly suggest you do for a couple reasons. So I have a reverse osmosis or RO water machine hooked up to my sink that I use for all of my chameleon's water. And then that hooks up directly to that float valve and allows water to fill in the container or the reservoir. And then when that ball gets pushed up enough from the water level, it stops the water flow. So it fills on its own and I don't ever have to worry about it overflowing or running out of water. Now, if you choose to get an RO machine, it's fairly simple to hook up. And I highly suggest getting one because you can use it for yourself. You can drink water from it and it tastes a lot better. But it's also much better for your chameleons than just giving them tap water. Tap water typically has chemicals and metals and other things in it that aren't necessarily good for you or your chameleon. Most tap water is safe to drink, but that's also why tap water tastes a little funky. So this RO machine essentially filters that water and gets out all those total dissolved solids. And the way I measure that, and I've measured that, is with this TDS meter. And essentially what it does is you put it in water and it will tell you how much junk is in it. So here in LA, I had 224 ppm, which is the rating for the total dissolved solids in the water, and took it to about 4, which is phenomenal. And then that essentially gets rid of the lime buildup, like the white residue that tap water leaves. And also, it's really good for your mist making machine because the ceramic discs on it will get gunked up with that lime residue over time and destroy your mist maker. So after that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a port for the power cord for the mist maker. Now, you could always just drill the hole for it and put duct tape over it. But since I'm a perfectionist, I essentially got a cover for the hole that the cord feeds through. And I'll explain that a little more as I do it. Here's a little part that you can skip over if you're not going to use one of these. I have an RO system, which I'll show you. I have an RO machine. Now this is just a cheap one off Amazon that's like 50 bucks and it works great. If you just want to use RO water and pour it in here, that's fine. But I'm actually going to install a ball valve for it. So I can hook it up, go to work, and then I'm at work and it fills itself and stops without me being here. Alrighty, so first thing I want to do is I want to figure out where I'm going to have my ball valve. In this case, it's going to be on the side. That way I can run it down through the corner of the wall and down to the sink. Now, I've tried this twice already, this mist making container, the reservoir, and I found that the higher up I put the ball valve, the higher the water level, the more fog that exited the reservoir. So, if you have it about halfway, I feel like a lot of the fog just hangs out in there. I don't know, that's just my speculation off of my 2 tries. Alrighty, so this is your ball valve. This goes against the wall of the container, and then as the water level fills, this is full of air. It's gonna push up, and then there's a little stopper right here, and that stops the water. Oops, actually, if I can get it in the center of the camera, you can see. So it's gonna be like this. So we wanna make sure the lid isn't like right here, so this can't lift up. Now, for this particular one, Online it said drill a 5/8 of an inch hole, but I'm gonna do 9/16 because I want it to be a tight fit. I don't want leaks. And again, with this, go slow and let the spade bit do all the work. Sweet. And again, get your little utility blade, just get rid of all that extra nonsense. Cool, so one more thing. Now, you need a hole for your power cord. In this case, I'm using a little neoprene, I believe it's called neoprene grommet. And it was quite large because I had the power source plug-in, like where it plugs into the breaker, I believe is what it's called, was about 5/8 of an inch. So I needed at least that big of a hole. But then the cord itself is like between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch. So I got an 1.5 inch neoprene grommet with a 1/4 inch inner diameter. You could always just drill the hole and then put duct tape. I'm a perfectionist, so I'm going to do it this way. So you want to make sure that the hole you're going to drill is going to be the groove diameter for the grommet. You know, it's not going to be the actual width of the entire piece. There's actually a lip on the between the two sides that let that hang on to the plastic or whatever your source is. So don't actually drill the size of the grommet. Make sure you drill like the size of the groove diameter. But in this case, it was like 1 3/8 that worked. So not quite 1.5. You know, because if you did the exact outer diameter of the ring or the grommet, it would just slide through. So for this, again, especially with these bigger ones, make sure that you go slow. Boom. All right, so with this bulkhead, it's gonna go right where this hole's at. Now, it doesn't just slide through. You're gonna actually have to use some a little pressure and screw it in. So let's go ahead and do that. And then with this part, of course, make sure that the rubber grommet or ring is on the inside. At this point, it might be a little hard on your fingers. If you're a little wuss like me, you can use a towel. All right, so now it's screwed in all the way, but you see how it's crooked. It's not really working. So it needs to go in this direction. So that's okay. We're just going to, don't try to force screw it because you're going to have another, because you're going to crack the plastic. We're going to have a little nut that goes on the other side that will be able to really make that tight. So now we have this in place, you see? And when the water level rises, this is going to go up and hit this little stopper right here and stop the water. Yeah. So now you need to take the little, I think this is a nylon ring. Oops. Put that here, and then take this little nut that it came with, and then screw that in. Now, once you get near the end, it's gonna get kind of hard to screw. Again, if you're a wuss boy like me, then use a towel and hold it in place on the inside so that thing doesn't turn. Awesome. Now, see. Now the next thing to do is take this threaded piece right here. This is what connects to the RO system. It's a 1/4 inch tubing. And then this side's threaded. Make sure you wrap a couple, like 2 or 3 wraps of Teflon tape around the threads to stop leaks, and then screw it in. Hold it in place on the inside while you do this, and then just get it nice and tight. You know, don't force it, just nice and tight. Cool. All right, so now it's time to make our pipes, or essentially what will act as the exhaust for the fog. As I had mentioned, I'm using 2-inch PVC for this. So now here I'm going to show you how to cut PVC.
The easiest way to do this
is you'll need a piece of paper, preferably not a white one, so you can actually see against, there's contrast against the white. You want to get like a little tiny hacksaw, or you could even use this kind of saw paper, and then you want to get a little metal ring like this. Not exactly sure what this is called, but I'll link it so you'll know. So essentially what this does, this little ring, is you can take a little flathead screwdriver. It gets bigger if you unscrew it, and if you screw it in, it gets smaller. So let's see here. So of course you can use a longer piece of paper. So you just want to make sure that this paper's lined up so that this edge right here is not crooked like this, but nice and together like that. And then you'll take this little ring, slide your ring over your paper, make sure the screw part of the ring is facing you, and then you just want to line the edge of this ring up with the paper. That way you don't accidentally screw this on and it's crooked and you have a nasty cut. Okay, so just want to at least get it like just about all the way. Kind of get it in the right area, and then once it's almost like really snug, once it's almost snug, you want to, when it's almost snug, just get it lined up with this paper all around, you know. Yeah, doesn't need to be perfect, just essentially this is going to be your guide when you cut. So go ahead and tighten this so that you can't move it, so it's nice and straight. So go ahead and move this guy back. If you have any extra lead with that, flip it over. And then what you'll do is take your saw, put it up against the metal ring, and then you'll start cutting. Okay, so you'll notice that once you actually get through, the blade will want to bend. So just turn this pipe and start a new cut. And just make sure all your cuts are connecting. Make sure your beard doesn't get in the way. You don't want to cut your beard. So once you get to the point where you have gotten back to this little screw, you can't cut anymore without it getting in the way. You know, you can't make a clean cut. So get your screwdriver again and bend this back down. And you just want to ever so slightly just unscrew it. Enough for you to just swing it around so that this little screw is on the opposite side of your mark now. And if you got a little off with your cut, just make sure this is still lined up with the paper all around. Pretty close to it at least. Once it is, tighten it again. And then turn it over. And now we're gonna cut this side. Once you get there, you can just tear off the end. And you see, now it's a pretty clean cut. What you wanna do is get a towel and make sure you fold it over so you don't cut your hand. And then just like this. get off all the extra little plastic pieces. Okay, so now you got your cut. You can either use this as a piece from the reservoir. You can use it to be a part of multiple segments, or you could even make this. If this is your piece that's going over your enclosure, you'll want to find where you want to drill your holes. All right, so I'm going to explain the reasoning behind why I chose to cut the PVC at the lengths that I cut it. So I could have chosen just to put one long piece of PVC over the entirety of all the chameleon enclosures to get to the furthest cage. Now, by doing that, it would make it extraordinarily hard to clean. Unless I had like a 6-foot brush or a really, really tiny hand, I couldn't completely clean the inside of it. So I cut it to be about 2 feet or so, because the brush I'm using to clean the insides of the pipe is about 15 or 16 inches long. So that way I could clean one side, turn it over, and clean the other side of the PVC. So then from there, I thought about, okay, well, how am I going to connect it without it leaking? Because just connecting them together with a coupling didn't make it airtight, and I would still get drips of water, which was really bad because some of the pipes are over electrical equipment. So what I did was I added a male adapter on one end and a female adapter on the other end, kind of like a battery with a positive and a negative side. That way each piece screwed into each other, and I wouldn't get confused about which piece went where. So then also another reason why I use the threaded pieces was because I could just put Teflon tape around the threads, and when I screwed them together, it would make an airtight seal. And then it's not permanent, so I can unscrew them really easily, clean them, put them back up, and apply more Teflon tape if I want to. All right, so now it's time. You've got all your PVC ready to go, and now you just need to cut holes for the fog to come out and the PVC that's going to go over the enclosure or enclosures. So this is a bit tricky, at least I found it tricky, and you might find a method that works better than mine. If you've got an industrial drilling machine, then use that. So I went ahead and tried small holes with one of the drill bits that I had already, one of the spade bits that I had already bought. And it worked. The 9/16 spade bit worked. I had to turn up the fan a lot in order for it to push the fog out. And when I had the fan that high, it felt like the fog was forced. So a lot of it kind of just blew randomly, where the method of that I was shooting for was for the fog to just kind of roll out naturally into the cages and kind of, naturally find its way through the top to the middle to the bottom and out the bottom. In my application, I chose to drill 1-inch holes for the fog to come out of. And by using 1-inch holes, I found that the fog naturally just kind of rolled out and wasn't so forced. And also with the smaller holes, I found that a lot of water was building up within the pipes and turning back into water. So essentially what that was doing was it was hindering the same amount of fog from exiting the pipes. It was just kind of collecting where that pool of water was in the pipes. So for these 1-inch holes, I use, I think, what's called a boring bit. So give it a couple tries. You might find a better way to do it. Don't get frustrated. And if you can't do it, then just stick with the smaller holes. All right, so when I previously uploaded this video about the DIY fogger, the method in which I drill holes into the PVC for the fog exhaust above the enclosures was not the most simple method. And somebody had mentioned to me is like, hey Dill, why don't you just figure it out, and so people will, one, hurt themselves, and two, so that people will be more inclined to do 1-inch holes. Now, if you want to, you can just go with smaller holes, use one of the spade bits that you've used for another step in the project. I've used the 9/16 spade bit for this part of the project, for the exhaust for the fog. And that was really simple to drill in, and it didn't involve any extra steps. But just realize that if you choose to do that, you'll need more holes for the fog to come out. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of fog sitting in the pipes, and it will just turn back into water. Water will sit in your pipes, and then your fog output won't be as high as it previously was. So with that being said, let's get into it. Anyway, so I went ahead and got a much better quality drill, more powerful drill than I was previously using, and I believe that has helped a lot with this hole drilling. So you might already have one of these nicer drills, and if so, you'll have a lot easier time drilling this hole. However, if you don't, then I'm also going to show you how to clean up the hole if you can't quite drill it all the way. All right, so the first thing you want to do is get your 1-inch boring bit. You want to get this nose, if you will, drill it in first, and then once it gets to the teeth, pull the bit out, take off all the frayed pieces of PVC, and then from there, I found that drilling at a high speed works well as long as you don't apply a lot of pressure on the teeth. So now I got a pretty clean hole with drilling at a high speed while keeping the drill perpendicular and not applying too much pressure, just letting the teeth do all the work. Now, if you don't get as clean as a hole as I did here, you're welcome to try again. It took me a couple of tries to get the technique down. However, if you get a little metal file like this, you can just go in here and pull off any extra plastic pieces that weren't cut off with the drill. Do realize though, if you use the file, you're not going to have as clean as a hole as you see right here, but you will get the job done and you will have expanded the hole properly. All right, so for the next part, we're getting close. We almost have the fogger ready. What we're going to need to do next is connect all of our pipes. So for this part, I used OD PVC Fusion single-step cement. Now, it's a little bit pricier than the typical two-step cement, but I found it a lot easier to use because you're just applying it once and it's not getting everywhere. It's not really liquidy. It's kind of, it has a high viscosity, so it's not dripping everywhere. And then the pipes for the fog aren't, covered in blue and purple cement. So highly suggest getting that. Makes your life really easy. So now coming into connecting the pipes together. This is going to be different for everybody, but essentially what I did was I found the angles I needed to get the pipes at, and then I connected the male and female ends to each segment of pipe, and then put a cap on the end instead of another male or female adapter, and then the part that connected directly from the reservoir was its own piece, so that way I could still clean it. And then I just used the cement to connect it all together, and then once that cured, it was ready to go. Something I do want to explain that might be a little confusing is that at some parts where I attached at the beginning of the pipe that would be connected to the reservoir, I attached a male piece to like an elbow. And essentially the way I did that was by just cutting a smaller piece of the 2-inch PVC and cutting it short enough to where the elbow and the male piece or the female piece would just touch each other. So anyway, let's get into that. Alrighty, and here we have our 2-inch PVC. This is gonna go on the reservoir. I'm gonna connect all these pieces together. Then this is gonna go to this, run down to this, over, connect all these to this, and then that will be the closest cage that I'm using the 2-inch PVC on. And then I'm gonna do the same thing, but do a bunch of segments using the male and female adapters. to get to the furthest cage with the 2-inch PVC. Alrighty, so now it's all put together. So this is going to be on the reservoir and not glued, so I can pull this off and clean this piece on its own. And then there's a small piece of 2-inch PVC right here that's cemented those two together, as well as here. And then this is all connected right here. And then another piece of PVC right here and right here on the inside. And then this connects to that. And now we just got the last one to do. Alrighty, we're just about there. And I'm happy to say I get to take down these hoses.
They look so tacky.
Alright, so after you've got all your PVC cemented and you've got them installed, you know, you've screwed your male adapter into the reservoir, you put your PVC across the enclosures. Next thing you want to do is get your fan control, speed control set up, and then your mist maker speed control set up. So I'm going to show you both of those right now, and I highly suggest getting both of those because you're not going to want your fan and your mist maker to always be at full speed, because you're going to find that you either have too much fan speed and the fog is being forced in, or you have too much fog and you just need to crank it down a little bit. All right, so the next thing we have here is our fan speed controller. A lot of fans don't come with one of these. I would highly suggest just getting one. For $10, and it's gonna change your experience with this fogger that you're making. So what this essentially does is it controls the speed of the fan that is on top of the reservoir. And at night, you know, what it's going to do is essentially going to control the amount of fog that's coming out, or the speed of the fog that's coming out into your enclosures. And so essentially, you're just going to want to install this in place of the power cord for the fan, and do this once the reservoir is in place. And yeah, so, and what's also nice is during the day is I can turn this bad boy up and really blow some fresh air into these enclosures. So this little dude will move. You can see this leaf right here moving because fresh air is being blown in. So it's really nice during the day, dries out the pipes. However, I keep it just above medium, and it does the trick. So if I didn't have this, I'd be having a lot of air, or a lot of fog being in these cages at night, and I don't want too much fog. So on top of this, the next thing you want to get, I mean, you don't have to get this next thing, but you know, it's also gonna be worth your money. Now this is another type of what they call a fan speed controller. This one is particularly rated at 120 volts, 15 amps, which is the same, it's the same design as the one on the House of Hydro website. It was just a fraction of the price. Now the reason you would want this particular one is because it can handle the power that is, that the mist maker is putting out, or that the mist maker requires, I should say. Some of the other fan controllers or things like this online aren't rated correctly, so just make sure you get the one that's rated for the mist maker that you have. Now essentially what this does is you can control between full blast, or you can go variable with this. And what that does is, if you use variable, you can use this dial the same way as the other controller that I was showing you for the fan, to control the rate at which the mist maker creates fog. So I use it for 4 enclosures, and I don't even use it at full blast. So just to give you an idea, if you don't use this, you're going to be having a lot of fog. So you'll just mess with this and mess with this, and get the fog output you want. So I went ahead and screwed in my 3 male adapters in the holes I drilled for the fog pipes, and then I went ahead and cemented the pipes together the way I showed you, and then ran them across the cages. So I wouldn't imagine that anyone's setup is going to be as wild as mine, but it is possible to do something as wild and extensive as this, just to kind of get your head around, how wonderful this is going to be. All right, so the last part you got to do before you're up and running with this new fogger or this new mist maker is to actually install the device that makes the mist or the fog. So the one I purchased came from a company called House of Hydro, and I'll put a link to their website in the description of this video. So their products are really nice, really fairly priced in my opinion, and it comes with a float. A lot of ones I was looking at did not come with a float. So I highly suggest you get one with the float so that your mist maker is not sitting too low. But anyway, so once you unwrap your mist maker, put it in the float, put the float in the reservoir, take the cord from the mist maker, feed it through the hole or the port that you made for the power cord, and if you chose to use your a rubber grommet, fit that into the port, and then plug it into the breaker, and plug that breaker into the fan speed controller that is for the mist maker. And what I went ahead and did was I opened up my mist maker, put in the float, and then put the mist maker in the float, and then put the mist maker's cord coming out, wrap the the hole we drilled for it, and then wrap the neoprene grommet around the cord, and then essentially work that neoprene grommet into the hole that it's sitting in. And that's going to be, it's going to be a little bit of work, but as long as you follow the directions and you use the same products, you shouldn't have any issue. It's supposed to be really tight so that no fog comes out, so no fog comes out the little slit in the grommet, no fog comes out the hole that the grommet is sitting in. So I went ahead and installed the power for the power cord for the mist maker into this. I believe this is a breaker for it, and then plug the breaker into the power source. So something you might consider doing before getting all this set up is maybe plugging in this mist maker into a smaller container of water where you can do some work on it and make sure all of the little ultrasonic discs are working. I think 2 or 3 didn't work on this one, so I had to replace them, which wasn't very hard. There's a video on the House of Hydro's YouTube that will show you how to do that. So just make sure that that's all the discs are working, because it's gonna be kind of hard to fix them while this is where it's gonna be living. So now once you do that, it's time to go. You're so excited, and you gotta wait till night. But that's okay, because I'm here to show you how mine did, so you can get psyched.
It's the finished result of the DIY fogger. Wow, so cool, so awesome, so much fog, so much humidity. Wow.
Anyway, so as you can tell, I'm very pleased with the way this has turned out. I'm achieving incredible amounts of humidity at night, and that's a lot to say. Fighting the temperature and the humidity of the room, especially with these screen cages. So before I get into it, I want to suggest that you don't shine lights on your chameleons or have lights on in the same room as your chameleons at night, as that can disturb their sleep. I'm just doing this for the sake of the video. So you'll notice that each of these enclosures has a very significant fog bank, and you know, that's more than I could have ever asked for with a store-bought fogger, or like one of the ones off Amazon. And it's absolutely phenomenal. You know, I've noticed my chameleons drinking less during the day. The plants seem happier, and it's a more naturalistic way of keeping your chameleons. Anyway, so as I previously mentioned, I made a modification to the two smaller cages pipe on top for the fog. I went ahead and changed the 1 1/4 inch PVC to 2 inch PVC, and I simply did that by putting in an adapter right here. That's a 1 1/4 to 2 inch PVC adapter, which is also threaded so that I'm not getting any leaks. So yeah, so when I did this, you know, I had a lot of fog coming out, but having one piece of pipe and having holes, like here, and here, over, you know, 2 over each cage, I found that the cage near the end where the cap is was getting the majority of the fog, because that's where the fog was building up. So by splitting it right here and putting another cap on this end, I found that the fog output on each cage was just about even. So yeah, just, you know, play with it. And if you drill too many holes, a simple way to fix that, so you don't have to keep getting new PVC and keep using PVC cement, is to just get some duct tape or some foil tape and just cover the holes you don't want to use. You know, I ended up covering these holes because, one, it was too much fog, and two, with the fan as high as I have it, a lot of this fog comes out at an angle, so it goes from the left to the right here, and you know, it's getting throughout the cage perfectly. There's no need for other holes. So, and same thing on this cage. I had to end up covering that one end. So now you'll notice that you can see all this fog and all this water built up on these doors. And you know, how do I circulate the air in the cage? Because that, you know, that would make you assume that the air is kind of stagnant. Well, I use computer fans. The bigger cages have 80 millimeter computer fans, which are on a dowel at an angle to blow the air into the cage, you know, at an angle to try to circulate the entirety of it. And then the smaller cages, you know, have the 40 millimeter computer fans, also with dowels for the same reason. Oh yeah, so with these fans on tops of these cages, they're not currently running, so I let the humidity build up, and then every hour they go off for about 5 minutes to push all of the air out the cage, or all the fog out the cage. And the way I have these connected, these USB fan connected, is by a USB hub, and then that's attached to a timer. And this is a smart timer so that I can set schedules for it and set, you know, it's basically a seconds timer, and it connects to your phone. So it's really nice. So yeah, you also notice that the fog, the extra fog, is coming out the bottom. And I have this extra fog circulating throughout the room so that it doesn't end up on the floor and make the floor all wet. I would wake up some mornings and, you know, step in some dew on the floor and have to wipe it up. And if you're like me and you have wood floors, that's not a good thing. So I have a fan on throughout the night to push this air throughout the room. So one last thing I do want to touch on is my positive experience with these Bluetooth thermometer hygrometers, which you can see it's like back in this little white box right here in the back of the cage. So it's about 15 bucks on Amazon, and it connects to your phone so you can check the humidity throughout the night, and it creates a graph and you can look at charts for like a week or a month, maybe even a year. I've not looked that far into it, but it's really great because I won't have to disturb the chameleons at night to make sure they're getting enough humidity. I mean, I don't, really think that they're not getting enough at this point, but if that's something you're interested in, I will link it in the description. So yeah. All right, so you've seen the final result. I hope this has been an inspiration to you to kind of embrace your creative DIY side and create something really phenomenal for the well-being of your chameleons or whatever reptile that you own that you're thinking about making this for. I have no complaints. I find it worth all the work I've put into it, and I find it worth all the money I've put into it. And, I have to say that I am achieving almost 100% humidity in like a 50% humid environment here in LA. So something I do want to suggest, and I'm actually making a video about right now, is plexiglass doors. It helps keep that fog in the cage until it exits the bottom, and then also covering the sides of your cage. I know there's a lot of controversy with having enough airflow for chameleons. Typically, the rule of thumb that I've always used and I've never had an issue with is creating the chimney effect, where essentially air goes in the bottom service door and then out the top screen. If you have any questions about this particular build, or you have any just general chameleon questions, go ahead and reach out and message me at Magickal Chams on Instagram, facebook.com/Magickal Chams. And then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and then spread the word. Have a chameleon-tastic day. All right, so one last little bonus you can get out of this project is if you're like me and you messed up one of your reservoirs and had to do it a second or a third time, you don't have to throw that container away. You just need to cover any cracks you have with duct tape or foil tape. So once you do that, you can essentially use this container, as long as it's clear, you can use it as like a little greenhouse for your plants. So I know some people like to switch the substrate that they're using for their plants. I have not done that yet. But essentially what you can do is you can either create a quarantine for your plants, or you need a little rehab box for your plants. And this gasket container is really nice because, like I said in the beginning of the video, this holds in humidity and moisture, and the plants will love it in there, and they'll get back to being healthy and thriving and everything. So I'm personally keeping this one outside. If you want to keep it inside, you just need to get some appropriate plant lights for it. And I do want to say, I was originally not planning on doing this. This is not my idea. I saw a couple other people doing it with these containers, and I was like, oh hey, I have one of those, but it's broken, and I was going to throw it away. So instead of throwing it away and wasting $15, I've just repurposed it. So yeah,